For those of us who are very sensitive and can pick up on other people's emotions, it is a gift. It's something we can all cultivate and get better at. And if we are sensitive, we probably came into this world already pretty heightened in these abilities. The shadow side of it is unintentionally being caught up in other people's energy all the time. We tend to hyper-focus on how other people are feeling or what other people should be doing instead of actually what we are feeling and what we should be doing. Hello and welcome back to Leading with Spirit. Today, I'm really excited to give you a couple really helpful energy tools for managing your energy. Last month, if you caught our episode, we talked about the empath story, being an empath, what kind of things come up in that journey, and really what kind of teachings you're trying to understand and discover in this life. If you missed that episode, definitely check that one out, especially if you are an empath or tend to be really in tune with other people's feelings and energy. It's going to have a lot of helpful information for you and, more importantly, context. So today I wanted to follow it up with how to actually manage your energy. So we're going to be talking about two main topics. One, we're going to be talking about entanglement in general, what happens when people's energies get mixed together and how to separate it so you can stay clear in yourself and stay focused on who you are and where you're going. And the other topic I'm going to talk about is boundaries, and I'm going to give you quite a few tools for you to play with for how to manage your boundaries, how to clear your energy, and how to stay in your own energy. So we're going to actually be doing some replay magic with these tools. I'm going to be bringing back a few episodes that highlight these topics. Again, super helpful information for you to use in your everyday life to help manage your energy, help manage your energy body. And most of these practices, you can go really deep into them, but you also can use them in just a matter of seconds, actually, to change your energy and to change what you're experiencing. With all that being said, please enjoy. Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. Hello and welcome. I'm Spirit Bird with Holton Healing Arts. And if you find yourself sometimes getting caught up in other people's energy or other people's feelings, then stick with me today because I have some really helpful information for you. So in shamanism, there's the concept of soul parts, right? So this means that each individual has their own soul or their own energy that belongs to us. And generally speaking, when all of your soul is centered in yourself, then you'll be stronger, you'll be more powerful, you'll be less susceptible to illness or accidents. And this is the ideal that we're shooting for, right? But of course, this isn't a permanent state. So we're always sending out and mixing up our soul parts with other people. Sometimes we're even abandoning our own soul parts. So as this shuffle is constantly happening, the goal is to become aware of when you're doing it and learn how to call them back to yourself. So often the exchange of soul parts is pretty subconscious most of the time, although often it is intentional. So this might look like when you have a friend that's going through a rough time and maybe you take some of their energy in and keep it close to you as you're holding the prayer for them for what you want for them, or holding the prayer to keep them safe. Or it might look the other way, where you might actually be sending some of your own energy out into their system and into their body for the same purpose, to really be with them, to help them through their tough time. And so this is intentional. It is intentional that we mean to help our friend and our heart is in the right place. But what's unconscious is that we're actually sending part of our soul into somebody else's system, or allowing somebody else's soul into our system. And this is what we want to become conscious of so that we're not doing it unaware. Because of course, when we have our soul parts and other people's stuff, or their stuff parts and ours, not only are we not whole, but things get pretty mixed up pretty quickly. So this also happens a lot with parents and children, or children and parents. We want something for them, or we want them to be safe. So we send out some of our energy to try to help tend that. And then the stuff gets all mixed up. And then it's harder for us as individuals to actually be clear about who we are and what we want when we have other people's energy in our system, right? So when we aren't conscious of our own energy and we're walking around unaware that our energy is out in other stuff, we would call this soul loss, right? And when we have a lot of soul loss, it's easy for other people's energy to actually fill the holes in our system. And this is where we begin to lose ourselves and lose what we want. And to be clear, soul loss isn't just from somebody else doing something to us. We also have soul loss when we have some trauma or we have parts of ourselves that we're ashamed of. And so we actually push parts of ourselves and our soul outside of ourselves and try to make it not who we are. And then we have soul loss, and we're walking around with emptiness in our system, right? Or holes or gaps in our system. But soul loss isn't what I want to talk about today. Actually, what I want to talk about today is entanglement. So there's a big difference between soul loss and entanglement. So entanglement also happens in the unseen realms, in the subconscious or superconscious realms, right? So in the invisible field that connects us all. And it's perhaps even more subtle and even more unconscious than actually trading soul parts. But it can also lead to crossed wires, to mixing up dreams, and to a loss of identity. And can also lead to just not being inspired, feeling uninspired in your daily life or your work. So this most often happens with people who live or work together, who are in close working relationships. So that, of course, can look like couples, or it can look like business partners, or any relationship where both parties, one or more parties, are working towards the same bigger shared vision, right? So the common dream is the same, but each individual person has their own unique part of that vision, part of that dream, or reason for that vision and that dream. And so what often happens in these close working relationships is we have our energetic threads that are out here in the invisible field. And while they're aiming towards that goal, so we've got that goal that's shared, and as those threads are moving towards that goal, they begin to get entangled and mixed up. They can get twisted around each other. They can one can override the other, one can get misdirected, they can get torn up, all sorts of things can happen, right? And of course, it's especially tricky here because they still have the same common goal. But as we begin to lose our individual parts in the goal or vision, we begin to lose our connection to ourselves, right? So what happens is we might actually get lost in our partner's dream of how they want a thing to happen, or get lost in our partner's dream or the reason they want things to happen. Or of course, they can also get lost in ours. And so again, it's tricky because it feels like we're still being supportive, but when we actually lose our own personal pathway and personal motivation and take on that of somebody else's, then it's harder for them to feel theirs. And we get into all this muddy places, right? And this is where you start to lose some of the magic because the energetic threads get tangled. So it isn't clear whose is whose and what is what anymore. And then often they are actually become knotted up, and this leads to blockages or confusion or resentment if we're not aware we're taking on somebody else's stuff. Or we might start compromising based on what we think the other person wants because they have the same vision as we do. And so we end up giving over our authority or our vision and letting theirs actually trump ours, thinking that it's for the greater good. But anytime we actually abandon ourselves and our own vision, we're actually not helping the greater good. The longer and the clearer we can be about specifically what it is that we want and what we're here to do and stay on that path, the better it is for everybody else. The easier it is for everybody else to do that for themselves as well. So this is a good practice to tuning into what you want and what energy is yours, and doing this on a regular basis. Again, especially if you work with a business partner or, of course, you have a romantic partner. So simple practice for this is to close your eyes and take a couple breaths and just begin to calm your system, calm your energy, call in presence, and be present in your body. And begin to tune into the vision or the dream that you have, specifically you have for your life and your business. Ignoring all of the other factors that make you feel like you can or can't have something. If you just had your ideal situation, tune into what that would be. And that might be a specific job, or it might be a specific lifestyle. It might be that I want to work this many hours a week, or I want time for these things. It might be visualizing yourself being fully rested and having extra time to enjoy being with your children. It might be being able to be resourced to buy local good food and have time to cook it. It might be being a powerful CEO, right? It can be whatever you're feeling you most desire. So as you're tuning into that, then we want to tune into our partners that might be sharing our vision. And imagine that you have threads coming off of your body moving towards that goal, and that they also have threads coming up off of their body moving towards that goal. Just begin to notice how those threads are interwoven. Do they feel tangled up? Is there a knot? Is one overriding the other? And so you can take some time here, of course. And if you're listening to this right now, it'd be a good place to pause and really tune in to what you notice is happening there. It's even possible that you think you're moving towards the same goal and you're actually not. And then when you become clear on how that is entangled, you can slowly begin to untangle the knot and repair your own threads. Getting clear which one is which might help to color code them or use different textures. Slowly untangling that knot or repairing any tattered threads, however this might look for you. And again, pausing to take more time here with this if you need it. And just like untangling string or wire, we're doing the same here with our energetic strings here, right? And so once you have them clear and cleaned up, clearly distinguishable from each other, repaired, clean, sparkling, feeling good, flowing, then focus back in on your dream and work to plug yours directly back into that dream, or aim specifically for that dream. And then return the strings to your partner. So this practice, like many other practices that I offer, is something that you can sit down and spend an hour processing if you have the time. And it's good to really give yourself that kind of time, like once a week if you can do it, or at least a couple times a month. A lot of times people talk about how you should meditate at least 5 minutes every day. And I, of course, support that. But I believe that it's more important to take time to do a full process and drop in deeply than it is to check the shallow box every single day. So if it's between one or the other, give yourself the hour or the half hour, right? That being said, this is also something that you can do quickly in a normal practice or a daily practice, or whenever you're sitting down to work towards that vision, right? And there's a way you can tune in really quickly, double check everything and repair it or call it back to where it needs to be.
Welcome to today's Q&A episode.
where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Yeah, one of the most common questions I get, and also one of the biggest places that I notice people hold some fear and that keeps them from moving forward, is the fear around taking on other people's feelings or being able to process energy without taking it on for ourselves. And this is, of course, a great question and a really potent place of learning for healers and empaths. And really where I'd like to begin is just noting that for those of us who tend to be able to tune into other people's energy very easily, we also are in the pathway of learning how to distinguish our own energy from other people's. So oftentimes, one of the first steps is that our energy actually overlaps and merges, and beginning to pay attention to where our boundary ends and somebody else's boundary begins. And so our first step usually on this path is actually learning to have boundaries for ourselves in the external world, learning to say no when we don't want to do something, learning to ask for what we want, learning to speak up when we've had enough of something and we're ready to move on. But on that, if you're actually practicing energy healing with other people or shamanic healing with other people, this is a common place that many practitioners run into, where they'll have a session with somebody and the session might be great, but as a practitioner, you are just exhausted afterwards, or you have some burnout, or maybe you even get sick after the session. Even if you're not actually working as an energy practitioner, you might also notice this when you go to large events with lots of people, or if you're in a place with low energy or low vibrations, right? And so then what tends to happen is we retreat and want to be alone. One place that is really helpful here for learning to not take on other people's energy is actually to avoid the retreat to being alone. Of course, everybody needs to be alone once in a while. You don't have to give it up altogether. But what commonly happens is we get overwhelmed by other people's energy. And so then to avoid having that feeling, we go more and more inward and become more and more removed from groups of people. And then actually it makes it even worse the next time we go out, because it's such a shock to our system to be bombarded by all of everybody's energy. So of course, take care of your own needs and take care of yourself. And of course, I'm not saying never be alone. And if you're finding yourself retreating more and becoming more and more sensitive, then you can actually treat this by doing the opposite. Make a point to go out anyway. Make a point to go in gatherings of other people anyway, but just take it little by little. So you don't need to go to a concert with thousands of people, right? Maybe start with a yoga class or something nearby where the energy feels right and it's not a ton of people, but you're not just removed and alone. And then you can gradually start going outwards from there and adding more and being around more people. And again, this will just counteract the reactionary place we get into, and also teaches our nervous system that it's actually okay and that it's actually safe, right? So beyond that is, okay, so let's say you've done some of your inner work around noticing your boundaries and learning to be around people. And now you're in a spot where you're actually noticing that you are taking on other people's energy and what to do next. What do you do with it when you do realize you've been taking on other people's energy? One of the easiest and most direct things to do is to imagine a grounding receptacle below you. So you can do this through visualization and meditation. You can do this through energy work. You can have a practitioner help you through this. There's lots of different ways to access this, and it's actually very simple. And what I like to do is imagine essentially like a bucket of some kind or on the ground that lets down into the earth for the earth to recycle and take the energy where it belongs or where it needs to go. And so what I'll do is tune into my body, close my eyes, tune into my body, and just do a full body scan and check for any places where it feels like there's energy that's not mine. Okay. And then I will just ask it to go down into the grounding receptacle. Right. So I imagine it almost like just a stream of energy coming from my body down into the grounding receptacle. It also helps me to then fill in those gaps with my own energy so they're not vacant and able to just be filled with other people's energy again, right? Which leads me to another trick for removing people's energy is actually to do a scan of your body and fill it up with your own energy, getting really clear and feeling into yourself and who you are and what that vibration feels like, and letting your whole body fill up with you. And then naturally, that will just push out other people's energy. Okay. And I'd like to add a note here that it's important to have compassion when you're doing this. If we approach it with a fear, somebody else's stuff is in me, I need to get it out so I can be safe, then we're actually just creating opportunity to call in more of other people's energy. We're teaching our body that we're not safe, which puts us into a state of fear, which actually weakens our system, which then makes it more susceptible for other people's energy to come in. So we want to have compassion. There's nothing wrong here. It's really common for this to happen, whether you're a healer or not. This is something that all people experience, right? And oftentimes our heart is in the right place when we do this. And also it happens subconsciously all the time. So it's nobody's fault, not your fault. You're not unsafe because it's happening to you and other people aren't intentionally trying to attack you, right? Actually, that leads me to a place that I've been playing with lately is for a lot of healers and sensitive people and empaths. We tend to be pretty watery in general with our energy. And so again, this is one of those places where it can get unclear where I end and where the other people begin. And this is where our boundaries get muddied up and why we tend to have trouble with boundaries, why we have trouble discerning what it is that we actually want, and also how we tend to take on other people's feelings, right? And so actually what I've been playing with is if you imagine our energy being water, sometimes when I'm in situations where I suddenly feel like, ooh, I can't tell if this is my opinion or I'm taking on the opinion of someone else or the emotions of someone else, I actually just imagine myself becoming a snowflake suddenly or turning into ice. And so it's just a little trick that I've been playing with. You might enjoy it or maybe not, but it's been a really quick check-in where I can move my energy from being watery to being solid so that I can very quickly see, oh, okay, this is me and this is not me. So that's a fun thing to play with. Let's see. So one more additional piece I'd like to add here is, so there are energy tricks to removing people's energy from our system. So we talked about the grounding receptacle. We talked about filling ourselves up with our own energy. Actually, another really simple trick for doing this is to, especially if you're actively working on transmuting other people's energy with permission, and you're working as a facilitator, you will probably be acting as a channel for the energies to move through your body. And so a simple trick is actually to just be very conscious that your channel is open all the way through your system, so it doesn't just come into your system and then stop. So I imagine my open channel all the way down through my body and all the way down through my root, and then extending all the way down into the earth. And that way I'm not trapping other people's energy in my body unintentionally. Okay. But you also can use the mind to actively help yourself maintain boundaries and not get caught up in other people's feelings, and understand when you are getting caught up in other people's feelings. And that is because for those of us who are very sensitive and can pick up on other people's emotions, this is what is a gift. It's something we can all cultivate and get better at. And if we are sensitive, we probably came into this world already pretty heightened in these abilities, right? The shadow side of it is unintentionally being caught up in other people's energy all the time. And also in that process, we tend to hyper-focus on how other people are feeling or what other people should be doing, instead of actually what we are feeling and what we should be doing. And this, again, is just the shadow side of it. And simply being aware that this is what happens can help flip that script. So the next spot here is also understanding that when we are feeling other people's energy or feeling emotions for other people, on some level that actually blocks them from being able to feel and process their own emotions. And again, it's not usually intentional. Our heart is in the right place. And here again, just being aware that this is what's happening, that actually when we are feeling something for somebody else, we're actually preventing them from their own healing. And so I use my mind to support myself through this process when I notice that I'm starting to move into somebody else's energy or starting to feel for someone else. I can just simply catch myself and say, oh, this is what's happening. And actually, what is in highest service at this point is to withdraw myself from their feelings so that they can heal and deal with their own feelings and then clean that up for myself. And again, sometimes even just being aware of that I'm doing it instantly stops it. And if it doesn't, then there are all of these other practices that you can go through to help move that energy through your system. And even actually just consciously making a thought of giving it back to them can sometimes be enough. Yeah. And on that note, this is something that parents do a lot with their children, or if you're a caretaker of somebody in some way, this happens a lot. And oftentimes it, again, comes from the right place or comes from the heart of we want to handle things for other people and help them with it. And sometimes it even comes from a place of, because we know we are strong, we'll do it for other people. And because we know we can handle it or we can take it, right? And just remember that just because you can handle something doesn't mean that you should handle it. And just because you can take something doesn't mean that you should take it. These are the most practical tips for you for learning how to keep other people's energy from getting stuck in your system, how to release other people's energy when it is stuck in your system, and how to be an empty vessel so that you can be a more powerful healer when you're working with your clients. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget, if you haven't already, please take our Inner Mastery Archetypes Assessment. This is a super amazing tool that's going to help you really quickly understand what your inner mastery archetype is. And along with that, you're going to get tons of insight on who you are, what your purpose is, what your core patterns and blocks are, and also what your core gifts are. It's an incredible tool that we've created here at Holton Healing Arts. And what I love about it the most is it's going to give you context on your spiritual journey. There has been tons of information about energy tools and about manifesting. And I love the topic of spiritual gifts. And all of this really beautiful consciousness expanding work is really fun and valuable. And also, without context of who you are and where you are in your path, what you're even doing here, you can only get so far with this consciousness expanding tools. So take a look at the Inner Mastery Archetype Assessment. I'll have the link in my bio for you in the show notes here. It's just a really quick quiz. And not only are you going to get instant insight into your core blocks and gifts, you're also going to get a free PDF that gives you deep insight into some of that patterning, more information on your gifts, magical tools you can use to break through your blocks, and energy reading activities you can also use to help call in the life that you want and start using your intuition and manifesting in a way that feels good and is right for your path. So be sure to check that out. Find me at Leading with Spirit Facebook group and let me know what you got. I'd love to hear what your archetype is and how much it resonated with you. Thanks for joining me today. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.